many requests to do a deep dive on both Michele Lamy and Marina Abramovic, and since they have such interesting and ominous lore surrounding them, I decided that this would be a perfect opportunity to take a little bit of time to talk about both Michele and Marina. Marina Abramovic in particular has been a figure who has piqued my interest since around high school, and I've always wanted to construct some kind of a visual essay or deep dive on her, but I just have not ever really found my way to the bottom of the rabbit hole surrounding Marina and Abramovic. And Michele Lamy has piqued my interest for the past year and a half or so. I'll go ahead and begin with Marina. We're going to talk about her background, kind of what got her start in the industry, and how she became so influential today in fashion and the entertainment industry in the United States. And then we'll do the same thing with Michele. And I just want to give you guys a disclaimer before we begin. I know that the topics of Marina Abramovic and Michele Lamy come with a lot of conspiracy theories, and it is very easy to kind of slip over into conspiracy theory land when discussing these two figures, but I really want us to keep in mind as we go throughout this deep dive to have an open mind, to keep our feet planted within reality, work with the information we have available to us, and not try to draw assumptions. I do not want us to be going into conspiracy theory land while discussing these two women. As I'm navigating through this deep dive, I also do want to be very respectful of the subjectiveness of art, religious practices, and belief systems. Some topics that we're going to get into are nuanced, and some may find them disturbing. Let's begin. So Marina Abramovic was born in Belgrade, which is the capital of Serbia, and she was born on November 30th of 1946, making her 77 years old as of present day. Yes, you heard me correctly. This woman is nearly 80 years old, and she is probably the most youthful, nearly 80-year-old woman that I've ever seen in my life. Marina came from a very strong religious upbringing, as her great uncle was a Serbian patriarch of the Serbian Orthodox Church. Marina's parents were Yugoslavian partisans, and they were a part of the National Liberation Army during World War II. Marina's parents worked with the Yugoslavian government, and the government went on to award them with the Order of the People's Hero Awards, and they were also appointed high-ranking positions within the Yugoslavian government. Very influential and well-respected people within their social and professional circles. Because of the tedious work schedules and rigorous hours that Marina's parents were required to work, Marina was primarily raised by her grandmother until she was about 6 years old. Marina's grandmother was extremely religious. In later interviews, Marina has divulged that some of her earliest memory consists of following her grandma around church. According to Marina, her grandmother was very ritualistic and very strict when it came to her religious beliefs. Marina recalled going to the church every single morning to light candles and often inviting their priest into their home for prayer. After 6 years of being raised by her grandmother, Marina's parents would give birth to their second child, a little boy, Marina's little brother. After Marina's brother was born, Marina was moved back in with her parents, and they would begin to coexist as a family of four. Marina has explained that the times in her childhood when she was living with her parents were very, very dark times for her. Marina's mother had a temper and was quick to punish her daughter for senseless things. Anytime Marina would do normal things that children do, dance around or play or create, Marina's mother would punish her and call it showing off. Hearing Marina speak about her mother and how she was during her childhood makes me think that Marina's mother really lacked that maternal bond that Marina needed as a child, and she almost seemed jealous of Marina. In this photo, you can see Marina, her baby brother, her grandmother, and her aunt. Unfortunately, Marina's mother would allow her work life to spill over into her home life, and she would raise her children as if she were their commander or their captain, opposed to a loving mother. Growing up, Marina's mother was very strict. She was not afraid to engage in corporal punishment as discipline for Marina and her little brother, and it became a very normal thing for Marina's mother to just control her and her brother's lives down to the second. At a very young age, Marina would take a liking to art, especially painting, and it kind of gave her an escape from the strict and rigid lifestyle she lived at home. Her and her brother were also subjected to her parents constantly getting into vicious arguments. According to Marina, her parents did not have anything close to a happy or healthy marriage. One of Marina's distinct memories from her childhood was the night that her father left. She recalls her parents getting into a massive argument and her father breaking 12 champagne glasses after he threw them at her mother, and walking out the door, leaving his responsibilities as a husband and father behind. Even after Marina's father left, the toxicity within the home only continued, and Marina's mother continued to be as controlling as ever over her children's lives. The love that Marina developed for art at a very young age was something that never really left her. In 1965, Marina was accepted into the Academy of Fine Arts in Belgrade, and she would complete her studies there in 1970. After graduating from the Academy of Fine Arts, Marina would travel to Croatia, where she would study under a well-known artist named Krsto Hegedushić. So sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Some of these names in this deep dive are very tricky, so bear with me, and I apologize if I'm totally butchering it. And she would study under this artist and be mentored under this artist for about a year before she would return back to Belgrade, and she would take up a position as an instructor at the Academy of Fine Arts, where she received her degree. But when Marina returned back to Belgrade, she would not be returning alone. During her time studying in Croatia, she met a fellow artist also in the same program as her, named Nessa Paripovic, and Nessa Paripovic would go on to be one of the pioneers of conceptual art, especially in the 1970s. While studying together, the two fell in love, they started dating and very quickly married. Very early into their marriage, Marina and Nessa would help to found the Belgrade Student Cultural Center, a place for local youth to become immersed in different styles and different types, genres of art. Marina and her husband at the time, Nessa, were not the only people who founded this student center. The Belgrade Student Cultural Center was founded by a group of 6 local artists, including Marina and Nessa. They became very well known locally for their conceptual art performances that were sometimes very disturbing and typically very thought-provoking. In 1973, Marina would begin to gain confidence in the messaging and the art she was trying to share with the public, and she would begin performing her pieces solo. This would be something that she would find a lot of success in, and she would later draw in massive crowds in her career. I'm not going to go through every single performance and project that Marina has been involved in, but I do want to talk about a few of them so that we can really get to understand who Marina is and the message she is trying to share with the world through her art. As we discuss some of these performances and pieces, I will need to censor my words to make this topic suitable for this app. Many of Marina's performances would be considered endurance art, and that can sometimes be very graphic and disturbing to view. I'm not going to be showing you guys any video footage of her performances. I will show stills or photos, but I'm not going to show you guys any videos of her performing her art. That is available online for you to look up at your leisure. I encourage you to do your own research as always. One of the performances that I want to talk about was a performance that Marina named Rhythm 5. And Marina performed this piece for the first time in 1974. According to Marina, her intent behind this performance was to evoke extreme bodily pain, and with her performance she used a 5-point star that was burning, or a pentagram. According to Marina, the pentagram in this performance represented physical and mental purification. When the performance began, Marina was standing outside of this burning pentagram, where she began to cut off her fingernails and her toenails. She then proceeded to cut off her hair. Marina then threw the clippings from her hair and her fingernails and toenails into the burning pentagram. Marina then jumped over the flames into the center of the star, where she would go and lay down for quite some time. The audience viewing this performance did not realize that after Marina had been laying in the middle of this pentagram for quite some time, she had lost consciousness due to smoke inhalation. A doctor and other audience members quickly intervened once they realized Marina was not conscious and pulled her out of the burning star, ending the performance. Once regaining consciousness, Marina expressed that she was furious that she had been pulled out of her performance, but eventually she calmed down and understood that she could not perform if she was not present in her body. In 1974, Marina performed another solo piece, which she titled Rhythm 2. Rhythm 2 was about a 5-hour-long performance. For this performance, Marina simply ingested a medication, which she described was something that was given to patients who deal with catatonia to force them to move and change positions. This medication caused Marina's muscles to violently contract, and she very quickly lost full control of her body and her movements. Marina's body would continue to spasm for hours while an audience watched. Marina then would take another medication that she described as a medication used to calm down patients who suffer from schizophrenia. This would cause the spasming in her body to stop and the performance would end. Throughout the 70s, Marina would continue to engage in solo performance and endurance art, but when Marina performed a piece that she created called Rhythm 0, it would really put her on the map amongst artists in her community, and it's still to this day one of her most well-known performances. Marina created Rhythm 0 to test the relationship between audience and performer. For this performance, Marina would place 72 objects on a table. She then informed her audience that they were able to use any of these 72 objects on her in any way that they desired without any form of repercussions. Marina even placed a sign in front of her that reminded the audience that anything they did to her would come with no kind of consequence whatsoever. During Rhythm 0, with the 72 objects laid out in front of the audience, they had the ability to inflict pain upon Marina, pleasure upon Marina, or even take her life. Amongst the 72 objects that Marina laid out in front of the audience were a rose, a scalpel, a feather, a whip, honey, olive oil, scissors, as well as a firearm with a singular bullet. For a total of 6 hours, this audience was allowed to do whatever they wanted to Marina. As the hours went on, the audience began to realize just how aggressive they could be with Marina without facing any kind of repercussions. That's when things began to turn into a very dark and scary situation. Some audience members were very gentle with Marina and did not cause her any kind of harm, while others became truly monstrous. By the end of her performance, Marina had every garment of clothing that was on her body stripped from her. One audience member sank rose thorns into her abdomen. A multitude of audience members groped her. One audience member took the scalpel off of the table and made an incision in Marina's neck and went on to consume the fluid that came out of Marina's neck. I kind of have to censor my words here, bear with me. Towards the end of this performance, an audience member picked up the firearm and placed a single bullet inside and put the weapon in Marina's hand, manipulated her finger so that the finger was on the trigger, and then this audience member raised the weapon in Marina's hand as well as his hand to Marina's temple. The majority of the audience members objected to this and a massive fight broke out. The majority of people did not want to see this woman's life end, despite the fact that she had given them permission to take it. Rhythm 0 showed just how inhumane and brutal that human beings can be to one another when one of those human beings is vulnerable and won't fight back, especially when there are no consequences on the table. Very disturbing, very thought-provoking. In 1976, Marina decided that she was ready to branch out to a new chapter of her life. Her and Nessa would go on to end their relationship. They would divorce after just 5 years of marriage, but their artistic careers would both continue separately. And as far as her romantic relationships go, Marina would not find love again until around 2005 when she married an Italian artist named Paolo Senavari, and they were married from 2005 to 2009. And they seemed happy together, but their romance was just not meant to be, and we did not see Marina really ever have romantic relationships other than Nessa and Paolo. Now, winding back a little bit. So after Nessa and Marina divorced, Marina would go on to move her life to Amsterdam. Amsterdam is where Marina would meet the German performance artist who went by Ulay. The same year that Ulay and Marina met, they began performing as a duo and they called themselves The Other. While the dynamic of their personal relationship has never been confirmed, it is assumed that on top of working together, Ulay and Marina shared a very deep love for one another. Marina and Ulay were so committed to this idea that they would even dress identically, often stepping out looking like identical twins. The idea was that Marina and Ulay shared one identity. Many art critics and other artists in the industry wondered if Marina and Ulay would have success embodying this singular souled identity. As many artists have a very large ego, many wondered if that ego could truly be fed when each artist loses their individuality. But despite the skeptics, Marina and Ulay developed a massive fan base as they performed under the identity of the other. I want to talk about some of the performances that they created and did together so that you can kind of get an idea as to what they were putting out there and the audience that they were pulling in. And I'm not going over all of them, I'm just going to go over some of them. In 1976, Marina and Ulay performed a piece called Relation to Space, and in this performance the two of them were completely nude. They were in a room and they just ran into each other over and over again. This would go on for about an hour while an audience observed. The purpose of this piece, according to Marina and Ulay, was to mix male and female energy. In 1977, the two did a performance where their hair was both pulled back into ponytails and then tied together. They sat there back to back with their hair tied together for a total of 16 hours, creating this well-known photograph that we see here. According to Marina and Ulay, the purpose of this piece was to see if they were able to feed off of the audience's energy to push their body's limits as far as they could. I think their intent behind this piece is very interesting, especially when we step back and we recognize how Marina and Michele have been subjects of many conspiracy theories and have been rumored to be feeding off of the energy of the entertainment industry. That is why they have become so immersed with so many different celebrities. And I think the phrase feeding off of someone's energy has very dark undertones, but I can also recognize how feeding off of someone's energy is not always a dark or negative thing. We also can feed off the energy of our friends and family members who are uplifting and positive. And the same thing can be said for people around us who are more negative and tend to drain our energy. Another piece that the duo created and performed in 1977 was a piece called Imponderabilia. Marina and Ulay both stood in a narrow doorway, completely nude, staring at each other, while members of the public would have to squeeze through the two of their nude bodies that were standing on either side of this narrow doorway. The duo's idea was to see if the audience members would turn towards the male or the female body when passing through the door. So we are now in 1980. So we're in a new decade now. In 1980, Marina and Ulay would create a performance that would become very well known called Rest Energy, and the first time they performed this piece was in Dublin. During this performance, the two were balanced at an angle on opposite sides of a bow, an arrow that Ulay had drawn tightly, and Marina had the arrow pointed directly towards her heart. This piece was meant to symbolize the dominance that men have over women in society. Marina holding the bow to her heart was a way to represent the woman who is willing to do anything for that specific man, even if it costs her life. During their time of collaboration, Ulay and Marina's performances were equally disturbing as they were thought-provoking. Like many artists and critics assumed would happen, as their career continued, Marina and Ulay would begin to not quite have the same visions, and tensions amongst the duo began to rise as time went on. In 1988, Marina and Ulay performed in a piece. This piece was created out of the inspiration of the time and the thought process we go through when ending a relationship. Marina kind of saw it as a ritual of one soul breaking off to become its own individual. This piece was called Lovers, and it was performed on the Great Wall of China. Marina started on one end of the Great Wall of China while Ulay began on the other. Marina began near the Yellow Sea and Ulay began around the Gobi Desert. The two walked for about 1,550 miles when they met in the middle of the Great Wall of China to formally say goodbye to one another. After saying their goodbyes, they started back on their journeys of returning to their starting places. They believed believed that this was the most spiritual way to end their partnership, but their friendship outside of their careers would continue for many, many years. Marina has been asked in the past if she ever has the desire to become a mother one day. She has expressed and been very open about the fact that she has become pregnant 3 times in her life, and she has made the decision to terminate those pregnancies as she believed that motherhood would be detrimental to her career. She did not think that she would have the ability to be an artist and be a mother at the same time. And part of me wonders if that's because of her mother's inability to balance career and motherhood at the same time. Now we're going to jump a little bit ahead to 1996. 1996 is when we were introduced to spirit cooking. This has been a very hot button topic. It has been the topic of a lot of conspiracies. You will likely hear the term spirit cooking mentioned more than once in this deep dive. Again, like I mentioned earlier, while discussing this specific topic of spirit cooking, we are going to talk about the information that we have available to us. We are not going to go into conspiracy theory land. In 1996, Marina collaborated with an artist named Jacob Samuel to produce a cookbook of sorts called Spirit Cooking. And Marina drew inspiration to create this cookbook of sorts because she believes that spirits feed off of things such as sound, light, and emotion. These recipes are created not to feed a physical hunger, but a spiritual hunger, according to Marina. But I will admit, some of the recipes per se in this cookbook were a little bit odd. Marina would later adapt her creation of spirit cooking into a very elite dinner party that she held in her New York apartment, and the people in attendance were typically celebrities and political figures, along with other artists and investors in the industry. The reason that we have a little bit of information about spirit cooking and some of the people who were involved within spirit cooking is because of not only the WikiLeaks scandal that happened, but also because of a journalist who went to one of these spirit cookings and came back and reported the time that they had there. So the infamous WikiLeaks scandal is what gave us a little bit of information about Marina Abramovic's spirit cookings. There was a lot of mystery that surrounded spirit cookings in general, and people were very curious about what was going on at these dinner parties. So an editor attended one of these dinner parties, and this is what they had to say about their time at the spirit cooking, and I quote, "You will need to be able to withstand a great deal of conversation about clairvoyance and tarot cards and didgeridoos and kundalini life forces and monks and gurus and how the soul can leave the body through the center of the frontal of the head to make it very far in this situation." I'm not going to make any assumptions of what Marina practices or anything like that, and I do just want to put out there, there's nothing wrong with practicing reading cards or anything like that. If you like it, I love it. If I'm not mistaken, tarot cards do align with occult practices, and Marina has said herself that not only does she engage in tarot cards, but she also believes that she is psychic. Marina has publicly stated that she, under the right circumstances, has the ability to foresee world events. For example, Marina has been quoted stating, "I dreamed of an earthquake in Italy. 48 hours later, there was an earthquake in southern Italy. I had a vision of someone pew-pewing the Pope. 48 hours later, someone tried to pew-pew Pope John Paul II." So when we see some of Marina's pieces come to life, I do not believe that it is outside of the realm of reality to wonder if these performances may be some kind of a ritual. And I don't say ritual with necessarily negative connotations. In general, if your audience is not aware that you are performing some kind of a ritual that aligns with your own personal spiritual beliefs, I don't agree with that. I think your audience needs to be able to consent to what they are about to view, be a part of, put energy into, and witness. And that is not me saying that I believe she is an inherently evil or demonic entity or anything like that. I'm simply saying it appears very ritualistic to me. So back to what we were talking about when it comes to the WikiLeaks scandal and how it ties to spirit cooking. At this point, we all know what WikiLeaks does. They're notorious for exposing members of different governments. But in 2016, WikiLeaks exposed thousands of emails of Hillary Clinton's campaign boss at the time, John Podesta. And while I know there is so much conspiracy and information surrounding this specific scandal, these specific leaks, I really only want to talk about what involved Marina and the spirit cooking. So John Podesta has a brother named Tony Podesta, and Tony Podesta is a established collector of art and also a longtime personal friend of Marina, allegedly. And in these leaks, it was revealed that Marina Abramovic had emailed Tony Podesta to invite him to a spirit cooking in her apartment and invited Tony's brother John Podesta along as well. Tony Podesta forwarded this email to his brother. That is how it came out in the leaks. While it is known that Tony Podesta, not John, but his brother Tony, attended many of Marina's performances and events, there is not any factual information that shows that his brother John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, ever attended any of the spirit cookings or events hosted by Marina Abramovic. Not saying that he didn't, we just do not have any evidence to prove that he did. I will say that Tony Podesta has a very large collection of art that depicts women and children being harmed. And we know that these pieces are a part of his collection, as he often gifts pieces to universities and art galleries, and that is typically recorded. In general, surrounding spirit cookings, there's so much that we don't know. I encourage you to do your own research and draw your own conclusions surrounding the topic. In reference to the uncertainty of Marina's beliefs and practices, I did find an interesting thread on Reddit in which Marina Abramovic responded to. A Redditor asked, "Marina, what place do you see the occult having within contemporary art? Can magic be made, not simply appropriated and performed? Thanks." Marina responded, "Everything depends on which context you are doing what you are doing. If you are doing the occult magic in the context of art in a gallery, then it is the art. If you are doing it in a different context, in spiritual circles or a private house or on a TV show, it is not art. The intention, the context for what is made and where it is made defies what is art and what is not." I think this is a very interesting answer. It gives us a lot of clues, but is still very vague. But it does make me wonder if the times when Marina was hosting spirit cookings in her New York City apartment and presumably in her star-shaped home that she purchased after selling her New York apartment, it makes me wonder if those spirit cookings done within her home were not intended nor created at any point to ever be art, but those were more of a practice. To Marina, even the pieces that we see that feel very ritualistic to her, if they're being performed in front of a gallery, an audience, it's not a ritual, it's simply art. In the context of it being inside of a home, it would not be art. I do want to make it very clear that the occult can sometimes be a scary buzzword, in my opinion. There's many members of the occult who are not evil, devil-worshipping entities. Things like astrology fall under the umbrella of the occult. I just ask that you guys be sensitive in the comments about this subject and ask questions, form your own opinions without, putting the entire community in a box. Like I said earlier, we are not going to go over every single performance that Marina has been involved in for a lot of reasons, and one of them is because some of them are just simply too graphic for this app. Some of the themes of these more graphic performances include themes of human consumption, loss of consciousness, and Marina has actually done quite a few projects that involve children. And the way that I have seen Marina involve children into her art as a mother, in my opinion, personally, makes my skin crawl. One specific project that Marina was involved in that makes me definitely unsettled involves a nude baby and Marina, and in this photo these two are posing and Marina is holding this baby and she is pointing to its private areas. Obviously this photo is censored, but in real life it is not. I personally do not think that this should have been created. I don't think that we have a place in our market, in our society, that we can sell photos of nude children and pass it off as art. Marina involving children in her art was not a frequent theme that we saw, but it definitely was a reoccurring theme. I have one strong opinion or criticism about Marina. It would definitely be, in some situations, I believe that Marina has blurred the lines between what is art and what is exploitative to a child. The inability to distinguish this, it does make me question her motives a little bit when she is doing these things. I was particularly puzzled because, in my opinion, and again, my opinions are not law, but in my opinion, Marina does have a little bit of an issue distinguishing the difference between exploitation and art in some situations. I was very surprised to see when President Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, invited Marina Abramovic to be an ambassador of Ukraine. And she was invited to be an ambassador of Ukraine to help the children affected by the war going on in Ukraine and to help rebuild the schools and such, according to her. I don't think there's some kind of strange conspiracy going on, but I do find it very strange, a very strange choice. Mostly because the art that Marina is most well known for is not child-friendly in the slightest. But again, that is just my opinion. I do have one other strong opinion about Marina, and that would be her admiration for the disgraced John of God. And we talked about John of God in our Oprah Winfrey deep dive briefly, and my criticism for both Oprah and Marina are similar. If you guys missed it, in a very small nutshell, John of God was virtually a snake oil salesman turned cult leader who considered himself a psychic surgeon and would perform operations on people using scissors and tools from the kitchen without any kind of anesthetic. He believed he could channel spirits of different saints, doctors, and surgeons, so he had the ability to perform these procedures. Many people, though, walked away with permanent damage to their body, including losing their eyesight entirely. After convincing hundreds and thousands of people that he was an enlightened man of God, it was revealed that John of God was nothing more than a monster. Accusations had been swirling for years, but eventually in 2018, a total of 600 people came forward with allegations of S-A and R-word from John of God, and the majority of his accusers were children and teenagers at the time they were harmed. But horrifically, his own daughter and his own granddaughter were amongst his victims. But 2 years before John of God was arrested, while accusations had began to ramp up at this point, Marina took a trip to Brazil for a film that she released in 2016 called The Space Between. The Space Between documented Marina taking multiple trips to Brazil, and amongst these trips, Marina spent a great deal of time immersing herself in the cult of John of God. Marina is a woman who considers herself to be enlightened and to have a higher sense of consciousness, which makes me question even more why she would feel inspired or revere a man like John of God. So Marina has also, on top of her performance art, she has also been involved in a lot of different projects in the film industry. She has directed many short films, and she has also directed many adult themed films, if you catch my drift, including the 2006 film Districted. Marina directed Districted alongside the artist Matthew Barney. You might recognize the name Matthew Barney. We have talked about him briefly when discussing the Balenciaga scandal. One of his books was in the background of one of Balenciaga's controversial campaigns. Matthew Barney is also the artist who was in a relationship with the musician Bjork, and the two have a little girl together. Tons of lore there. We'll save it for another day. So the film Districted was written by Matthew Barney alongside his co-writer, the infamous Sam Taylor Johnson, a woman who is married to Aaron Taylor Johnson, who is 24 years her junior, and they began dating when he was 18 and she was in her 40s. And she was his boss. Reading through some of the reviews and transcripts of this movie, while acknowledging that I am not the target audience for this genre, in my opinion, there are themes of this movie that are horrifically dark. Imagery and scenes from this movie depict things that are very intimate, like childbirth, in a not innocent way. I can't hardly even talk about this film because of how graphic it is. So to kind of wrap things up when it comes to Marina's background, I have no idea if this woman channels dark entities or conjures up spirits. Belief systems or lack thereof are not really, in my opinion, a topic to be debated over. I think if we are putting humanity first, we should be able to coexist without walking around with a sense of superiority because of our religious beliefs. Does that mean I will be dabbling around in this stuff? Probably not. I do think it's really interesting, and I do think that these figures who make us unsettled or uncomfortable, I think there's a lot we can learn from them, while also looking inward as to why we feel uncomfortable. Now we have established kind of a background in who Marina Abramovic is. Now I want to move into Marina Abramovic in American pop culture and how she has become kind of a focal point for a lot of celebrities, always seen with celebrities, etc., etc. As Marina's career developed, other artists and fashion designers in particular took an interest in her and began collaborating with her on different projects. Marina has even worked with brands that we would probably recognize. For example, Riccardo Busi, who is a close friend of the Kardashians, a close friend of Marina, very well known within the industry.
The 10th anniversary of Givenchy, and we decided to do the show in New York. and asked Marina Abramović to help me, my mother slash best friend, to collaborate with me.
And in 2015, Riccardo brought Marina on board as Givenchy's creative director. And I think that collaboration with Givenchy really put her on the map with a lot of other celebrities who were very involved in fashion. Kanye West, Lady Gaga.
Marina, I think you are so wonderful, so beautiful and inspiring. She's not terrified by, she's the most scary thing. We are our most terrifying monster, and she's not scared of herself.
Speaking of Lady Gaga, back in 2013, Lady Gaga found herself in a little bit of a scandal alongside Marina Abramovic, who has walked around with the label of a devil worshiper, Satanist by the media for almost her whole career. In 2013, there was an event and photographs were shared to the press, and this event was labeled a spirit cooking. There was a multitude of celebrities at this event, and one of these celebrities was Lady Gaga, and she went together with Marina Abramovic. This event was not a spirit cooking. This event was actually an annual benefit at the Watermill Center in New York State. This fundraiser was called Devil's Haven, and it was the Art Center's 20th annual benefit. So this has been going on for quite a while. Actor Alan Cumming, who starred in Spy Kids and Burlesque, just to name a few, was the master of ceremonies this evening. Not only was this event full of interactive art galleries, conceptual art, endurance art, Hugh Jackman was also one of the notable figures who was in attendance at this event. After seeing a photo of Hugh Jackman at this event, it kind of almost put me at ease. It's like, oh, well, it couldn't have been too dark, too controversial. As we know, Hugh Jackman has a really good reputation. As I was going through photos of this event, I did notice something that kind of made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, particularly in this photo of Hugh Jackman. If you look in the background, you can see that there's a child right there. Then I started noticing that there are actually a lot of children at this event as I started looking through more photos. And this event was most certainly not a child-friendly event, in my opinion, as a lot of the performers were completely nude. There were even some minstrel-esque themes going on as well. But that just prompted me to dig a little further. You can see in this photo of Hugh Jackman that we were just talking about, and obviously this photo has been censored, but Hugh Jackman seems to be standing over some kind of piece that shows a person laying nude in a shallow pool of a dark liquid. As you can see right behind him, there is a child in the crowd. Speaking specifically of this piece right here, this specific piece and photos of Lady Gaga and Marina Abramovic at this exhibit is what would set off a massive firestorm in the media that Lady Gaga is involved in dark rituals. I don't know the details of the performer. I don't know what liquid they were consuming. Most of the evening, Marina can be pictured with Lady Gaga and the founder of the Watermill Center, Robert Wilson. There's one particular photo of the three of them that I saw from this event that I have just not been able to shake. It is a photo of an actor, one of the performers at this event. His name is Philip J. Lewis, and this man was completely nude, covered in body paint, and running around in the woods. I don't know. I don't know what it was about this. This just left me feeling very uneasy. Winona Ryder was also one of the attendees at this event, along with figures such as Ramona Singer, and of course Rick Owens and Michele Lamy were also in attendance at this event. And I don't know what all went on at this event. If you're an adult, go do what you want with your friends. But I don't understand why you would bring your kids to this kind of event. But the celebrities who we just mentioned being in attendance at this event are not the only celebrities whom Marina has become very close with. One very high-profile celebrity that Marina had a very close relationship for a long period of time was Jay-Z. In fact, Jay-Z even adapted one of Marina's performances titled "The Artist is Present" into a music video for his song Picasso Baby.
In a smaller venue is a bit more intimate, so you get to feel the energy of the people.
This music video would just be yet another catalyst for a lot of different rumors about Marina's spirituality and her connections with celebrities. Drama would arise between Marina and Jay-Z after Marina accused Jay-Z of failing to give a donation to her art institute in payment for this music video. But Jay-Z later posted a receipt sharing proof that he did indeed make a payment, a donation to her art institute. Marina has also found herself being close friends with some controversial celebrities, to say the least. One of these celebrities would be James Franco. Back in 2012, Marina partnered with James Franco and they created a piece in which for hours, Marina simply stuck gold sheets all over James's entire body.
Once Picasso been asked what his paintings means, he said, "Did you ever know what the birds are singing?" And you don't, but you listen to them anyway. So sometimes with the art, it's important just to look.
On further research, James Franco and Marina's relationship was all the way back to 2009 when James Franco interviewed her for a piece in the Wall Street Journal. And since 2009, the two have collaborated multiple times. Marina speaks very highly of James Franco, stating that he's one of the most interesting actors of his time. I personally disagree with that. As we know, James Franco has been accused of trying to hook up with a 17-year-old fan, which she posted screenshots of back in 2014. As we know, James Franco has also been sued by his students at his acting school for physically taking advantage of his young college students. But just a year after this 17-year-old fan came forward with screenshots showing that James Franco tried to get her to come to his hotel room to sleep with him, Marina invited James Franco to a massive art event called the Elysium Heaven Gala, along with multiple other celebrities including Naomi Campbell, Bella Hadid, Joaquin Phoenix, James Marsden, Usher, Monica Lewinsky, and funny enough, the owner of the app called Triller, his name is Ryan Kavanaugh, and he's also involved in like a massive lawsuit with the podcast H3H3. He was also in attendance at this specific party. So all of this being said, I try to have a very open mind and nuanced ideas when it comes to subjects like art and religious practices. I never want to demonize someone's creativity or belief system. I can absolutely acknowledge that Marina is very talented, very fascinating, very interesting. I don't think that excuses some of the boundaries I believe Marina has crossed even as a creative. You are more than welcome to tell me I'm completely wrong and overthinking it in the comments. I just don't think that there is an excuse for children being subjected to things they shouldn't be. So now I want to go into a little bit of detail on Michele Lamy's background. I'll tell you right off the bat, Michele does not have quite as much dark and twisty lore as Marina, but her story is still extremely interesting. I really started getting lots of requests to cover Michele and her fashion designer husband, Rick Owens, for the past year or so, and I've also gotten a lot of messages from people who have been at parties with Michele Lamy and have stated that she has a very palpable, strong energy, sometimes a very heavy energy, an energy that really shifts the mood of whatever room she walks into. And what's very interesting is Michele really does not have a very controversial past, but people are intuitively disturbed by her. What is it? Is it her energy? Is it simply her appearance? Let's take it back to the beginning with Michele. Michele was born in France in 1944 during the midst of World War II, and she's about 80 years old today. Michele was born into a very tight-knit family, and she lived very comfortably growing up, as her family did have a considerable amount of money. Her grandfather was a prestigious Parisian fashion designer. In the 60s, Michele was accepted into university, and she began her studies to earn her law degree. During her time in university, she was also studying under the well-respected philosopher Gilles Deleuze. After graduating with her degree, Michele began working as a criminal defense attorney, a position she held for about 5 years before taking a life-changing trip to North Africa, where she fell in love with the culture and also took an interest in the art of tattooing faces. After becoming more in touch with her creative passions on this trip, and while searching for freedom and happiness to be a lifestyle opposed to a vacation, she left behind her high-paying job as an attorney and began working as an adult dancer. She would then move to New York City, where she would be living in the Chelsea Hotel, working as a dancer and selling handmade jewelry out of her hotel. Just before 1980, Michele would move to Los Angeles, and she has stated that as soon as she arrived, she felt like she was home. This is when Michele received the dental work that she had been dreaming of for quite some time. time, which is a staple of hers in present day, Michele found what she called a new age spiritual dentist who was willing to perform the procedure that she had been wanting so badly, to have every single tooth in her mouth plated with gold. So that's where the gold teeth came from. As Michele began to really plant her roots in Los Angeles and establish a career there as an artist and as a designer, she would then go on to begin opening restaurants and nightclubs in both Los Angeles and New York City, and then she would start her fashion line called Lamy, which would soon be worth over $10 million. At some point in her early career, rumors of Michele being a witch and being involved in witchcraft began to swirl, and in the past year or so, these rumors have begun to swirl yet again. When Michele has been asked about what her religious beliefs or practices are, she's denied ever practicing witchcraft or being a witch. This is what she had to say about her beliefs. "I don't know what a god is. I believe in DNA. I believe that genes have memory. I believe in civilization. I don't have a religion to put a name on it, because the more the sciences are finding, the more proud of humanity I am, and thinking that people can behave like incredible human beings without the help of a god, that is what I believe in." Which I think is a very grounded and rational response. I agree with her that we shouldn't need a religious belief system to treat one another good. Despite Michele denying practicing witchcraft, users across social media have called Michele the witch who casts spells on the music that we listen to. For what purpose? Not sure. That's just the theory. Through her creative endeavors and her entrepreneurship, Michele would find a love in a filmmaker named Richard Newton. The two would be married briefly, and they would give birth to a little girl who they named Scarlet Rogue. And in present day, Scarlet Rogue is also an artist herself. At the time that they were married, Michele was actually 20 years younger than Richard Newton, so she was considerably younger than her partner, but this relationship did not end up working out. Their marriage was very brief, and Richard Newton did pass away in 2006. Later in life, Michele would infamously go on to meet Rick Owens while searching for a pattern maker for her fashion line, Lamy. She was struck by Rick Owens' talent and immediately hired him on the spot to come work for her. The two quickly struck up a friendship that evolved into a romantic relationship that would later evolve into a marriage. This was yet another relationship for Michele that had a very large age gap, but this time Michele was about 20 years older than Rick, opposed to Richard Newton, who was 20 years older than her. In 2002, Michele and Rick, and presumably Scarlett, moved to Paris, where Michele would help Rick Owens create his own fashion line, which, as we know, would become very successful. In 2006, Michele and Rick officially tied the knot, and they are still what seems to be happily married to this day. Because of Michele's connections to high fashion, it automatically gave her a connection to a lot of different A-list celebrities, entertainers, rappers, the rich and famous. Really, ever since Michele was in the 2015 music video that FKA Twigs invited her to be a part of, we really started to see Michele more and more frequently. A$AP Rocky even credits much of his success in his career to Michele Lamy. He has publicly shared that Michele has helped him design his album covers in the past, and Michele was the person who helped him get involved in the world of art and appreciate art, see how art intersects in so many different industries. Some of Michele's notable features include not only her gold-plated teeth, her black fingers, and the face paint she wears on her face. To get her fingers this color, Michele will soak her fingers in hair dye, and then she will use vegetable dye to paint a black streak across her forehead every day. She has stated that the reason that she does this is because these markings make her feel more centered and more grounded. If she likes it, I love it. One little known fact about Michele Lamy: has been boxing for 35 years and even opened her own boxing gym at one point called Lamyland in London. Neither Michele nor her husband Rick Owens have been a part of any massive scandals that I am aware of, other than Rick Owens' 2021 collaboration with Converse. I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2021, Rick Owens released a collaboration with Converse. In the campaign, there was models who had a very Slenderman-esque vibe, and in one of these campaigns, they appeared to be in the shape of a pentagram or a goat's head that was being alleged. Many began to speculate that this was a sign of Baphomet, a deity that is recognized in a myriad of different religions. The classic Converse All-Star in this collaboration was also replaced, and it was not received well by the public at all, especially coming right off the back of Nike and Lil Nas X's failed collaboration of Satan shoes that caused a huge mess. And then Rick Owens did this just a couple months later. People were not having it. Rick Owens was later asked about this scandal in an interview, and he didn't seem too concerned about the public's opinion of this collaboration. He stated that he does not believe in the devil, and he has used the pentagram as a logo for his brand for many, many years, and he uses it as a sign of rebellion from his conservative Catholic upbringing. Now, to wrap this up, I want to talk briefly about Michele and Marina's friendship with one another. Michele and Marina have been connected for many, many years, and they seem to have very warm feelings towards one another. The two recently sat down with Hube magazine for a dual interview, which was really a conversation that we got to get a peek into. They speak very highly of one another and agree that they have very similar creative perspectives, and they both have very optimistic outlooks on life. And any big fashion event you'll see Marina at, typically you'll see Michele there as well, vice versa. They're just really within the same circle, doing different things but still very connected. All this being said, I can accept that not all art, not all fashion, not everything is made for me. I know that I am not their target consumer. I am not their core audience. My criticisms of where boundaries cross, especially with Marina, still stand. Imagery and kind of like the ritualistic performances that we've seen from Marina do make me feel uneasy, and they don't sit right with me, but those pieces may speak to another viewer in a completely different way, and I acknowledge that. It's really important to unravel the origins and the stories of these people who are so shrouded in conspiracy theories. I think it's really important that we talk about information that is available to us so that we're able to keep ourselves grounded and not falling down a rabbit hole that goes into conspiracy theory land, because unfounded conspiracy theories can sometimes become very harmful and very dangerous to certain communities. I think it's just very interesting to hear kind of what the reality of their backgrounds are versus the conspiracy theories that are talked about currently. As always, I do encourage you guys to do your own research, form your own opinions, ask questions, and also keep an open mind while also protecting your own boundaries. That's all I have for you guys. I will see you in the next one.